Hello everyone. In this video we are going to learn how to take advantage of covered interest arbitrage opportunity. Covered interest arbitrage opportunity arises when interest rate parity does not hold. And interest rate parity in turn is a relationship we get when we apply the law of one price to international money market instruments. And you have the equation provided here, and this provides us a linkage between interest rates in two countries. And we have a separate video that shows you how we derive this equation. So if you're interested, make sure to watch that. But the idea here is essentially that on the left-hand side, you have rate of return you will earn when you invest, or the return you will get when you invest domestically here in the US, assuming you're an American investor, and if you had invested $1 domestically. On the right-hand side, what you have is return or maturity value from foreign investment. If you take that same $1, convert it into foreign currency at the spot rate and invest it at the foreign interest rate, and then you hedge your foreign exchange risk using forward contract. Yeah? Again, we have a separate video on the derivation of this equation, so make sure to watch that. So let's use a simple example to see how covered interest arbitrage works. We have spot exchange rate given to us, which is $1.25 per pound in this case. We have US interest rate, and we have a British interest rate. So if you plug these numbers into the interest rate parity equation, we get forward rate of $1.20 per pound. What this means is for interest rate parity to hold, the forward rate needs to be $1.20. If actual forward rate happens to be anything other than $1.20, then we have covered interest arbitrage opportunity, and traders can make money. In other words, they can make risk-less profit. Here's a summary of the steps involved in covered interest arbitrage problem. So if you were solving covered interest arbitrage problem, the very first thing you will do is obviously check if interest rate parity holds. If interest rate parity does not hold, then you need to determine where you need to borrow and where you need to invest in order to make money. An easy way to remember is that you need to borrow from the side that's cheaper to borrow or lower, and you need to invest on the side that where the number is higher. And it will make sense once you look at an example. And please remember that this is not the same as simply comparing the two interest rates. We're talking about rate of return after we consider, after we hedge the exchange rate too. Once you determine where you need to borrow and where you need to invest, again, a simple rule is you want to borrow, same as you want to buy low and sell high, you want to borrow where the number is lower and invest where the number is higher. Then you set up the rest of transactions and you can determine the profit. And note here is that the sequence of transactions you need to undertake to take advantage of covered interest arbitrage will be the same regardless of whether you're a domestic investor or foreign investor. The only difference is going to be in which currency you want to realize your profit in. And finally, you should be able to explain how interest rate parity will be restored as a result of the above transactions. So let's see how that works using the example that we have. So suppose forward rate happened to be $1.30. And for simplicity, let's assume that we can borrow $1,000 or the equivalent amount in foreign currency at the spot exchange rate, which means $1,000 converted into pounds at the rate of $1.25 per pound. That is 800 pounds. So we can either borrow $1,000 or 800 pounds. So the first step is going to be checking whether interest rate parity holds. So let's do that. So we plug in all the numbers that we have into the interest rate parity equation. So US interest rate, UK interest rate, spot rate, and forward rate. Remember that exchange rates are quoted in direct terms. That means we're talking about dollar price of foreign currency. So just keep that in mind. So once we plug all these numbers into interest rate parity, we see the two sides do not equal. So this means interest rate parity does not hold. So the next step is then going to be where should we borrow and where we should invest in order to take advantage of the fact that interest rate parity is not holding. So we said before we want to borrow from where the number is lower and invest where it's higher. So in other words, we want to borrow where it's cheaper, where the funds are cheaper, and invest where the proceeds will be higher. So this tells us that we will be borrowing in the US and we will be investing in the UK. And here are the exact transactions. So today, the first thing you're going to do is, as we said, we are going to borrow in the US. We are going to borrow $1,000 at the US interest rate. Then we immediately take those $1,000, convert them into pounds at the spot market, at the spot rate of $1.25, which will give us 800 pounds. Then we take those 800 pounds and invest in the UK. So remember, we said that we want to borrow in the US and invest in the UK. So in order to invest in the UK, of course, you need to have pounds. So that's why we are going through these steps. Then the last step is going to be getting into forward contract. Since you know that you will be receiving maturity value of your investment from UK in pounds, what you can do is you can agree to sell those pounds forward and get into that agreement today. So you get into agreement to sell the pounds forward at the forward rate of $1.30 in 1 year's time, and that exact contract amount is going to be 892.48 pounds. The reason why we know this is because we know the UK interest rate. And for simplicity, in all these examples, we assume that we're working with default-free investments and we know the interest rates up front. So 800 pounds invested in the UK at the UK interest rate of 11.56% will give us these many pounds. So that's why we know the exact forward contract amount. But remember, with forward contracts, there's no cash flow changing hands. Today, you're simply signing the contract. So the net effect today for cash flows is 0, as you can see. So now a year goes by. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to collect the maturity value of your UK investment. So those 800 pounds that you invested in the UK are now worth 892.48 pounds. So you take your 892.48 pounds and then you sell them as you had agreed to, and you will be selling them at the forward rate of $1.30, which will give you $1,160. Now, of course, you have to repay your dollar loan. So at the US interest rate of 7.1%, this means you owe $1,071. So you will use your $1,160 that you received from the forward sale, and then you will use that to repay your loan. And the net effect is you have a profit of $89.22. So this is if you're a dollar-based trader, if you're an American trader. Now, what happens if you happen to be a British investor and you still wanted to take advantage of this covered interest arbitrage opportunity? As we said before, the fact that you need to borrow in the US and invest in the UK in order to take advantage of this covered interest arbitrage opportunity will not change. That means for a pound-based trader, the steps are exactly the same to start with. You still borrow $1,000 in the US, and then you will be immediately using those $1,000 to buy pounds from the spot market, and then you will be investing those 800 pounds in the UK. So these steps are exactly the same as the steps for a dollar-based trader. The only difference is going to be the contract amount for your forward contract. When you sell pounds forward, you will be selling just enough amount that will help you repay your dollar loan, because you want to keep your profits in pounds, and that amount is 823 pounds. So net cash flow at the outset is 0, just like before. Now a year goes by and you collect your investment from UK, which is now 892.48 pounds. Then from those 892.48 pounds, you just sell enough pounds to buy $1,071, so you can use those $1,071 to repay your dollar loan. And your net cash flow is 68.63 pounds. So now your profit is in pounds. So you're not selling all of the 892 pounds you received from your UK investment against dollar. You're just selling enough pounds to buy $1,071. So you have a profit of 68.63 pounds. The final step is we need to be able to explain how all these transactions affect interest rate parity. If everyone starts borrowing in the US, well, that will naturally raise interest rates in the US, as there will be a lot more demand for funds in the US. Then if everyone's taking those borrowed dollars in the US and buying pounds at the spot rate or from the spot market, what that does is increase demand for pounds, and spot exchange rate will go up. Again, remember that spot rate here is quoted in direct terms. Then when everyone takes those pounds and start investing in the UK, you have so much more supply of funds in the UK, which will lower UK interest rate. And finally, as everyone starts selling pounds at the forward market, forward exchange rate for pounds will go down. So if you plug in all these numbers into interest rate parity equation, remember in the beginning interest rate parity did not hold, right? So if everyone starts undertaking these transactions, then US interest rate will go up, which means this whole left-hand side will go up. Then you have the net effect of all these is that the right-hand side will go down, and then eventually the two sides of the equation will equal, which means interest rate parity will be restored. So this means that as people take advantage of the fact that interest rate parity was not holding and engage in covered interest arbitrage transactions, those very transactions restore interest rate parity back into equilibrium. So this is one example of covered interest arbitrage. We have another example of covered interest arbitrage. So if you're interested, make sure to watch that video.